So actually, I think some of the money, we are very fortunate, to be able to invite some of the researchers in the Belt and Road country to contribute a country report to us. I think they are very valuable, and I think we treasure it very much. So without further delay, my PowerPoint, yes, thank you. So there's the difficulty, without the PowerPoint, we don't have power, we don't have point. So yes, and this joint work, this work, is done with my postdoc, Chen Mengli, and then and also Shan Yu, right? And actually, that is as what we said before. If you want to do anything, we like to understand the population first. I think it's very important. This morning they said that 酸解兵法说 you have to know your opponents before you how you do the job. Okay. This is the objective, 50 minutes. I think what we like to highlight, the OBOR, the country population dynamics. We're looking at the demographic, the transition, and also the window of opportunities. And then we talk about the GDP. I think there's a lot of discussion on the GDP, whether the GDP is the one we have the aim at, and also we are trying to talk about achieve healthy and sustainable development. Now, it actually, I think, according to the United Nations, they're talking about the right to development itself. It must be fulfilled so as to equitable meet the population development and environmental needs for the present and the future generation. So hopefully, I think the whole presentation itself would like to provide you a more global perspective on how do we see the development of the Belt and Road countries. Now, that is the Silk Road, and that is the Maritime Road. Okay, so there are two roads. Okay, when we say Belt and Road, so it's this guy and this guy. Okay, so we have two, and then in these places, I think we are talking about it cover 62% of the population, but the economy itself is only represent about 31%. So it actually, you can see there's a huge imbalance there. Well, at the same time, you can see there's a lot of potential there as well. And at the same time, what you can see, China, I think it does play. So there's a huge, I think, there's in terms of the population, I think China, 32.2%, among all the Belt and Road country, and at the same time, I think when you're looking at the so-called the economy itself, I think we're talking about 48%, and according to Lila, and then we know that India is catching up very fast in terms of the population. So I think that is the challenges. So now what happened when we look at the TFR? The TFR is represented by the total fertility rate, is the number of the baby given birth. I think by the women go through the reproductive age. What you can see, I think along this Belt and Road country here, I think what you can see, they still, I think, remained at a very high level, relatively in comparing to the rest. So it actually, you can see there's a lot of population momentum there. I think that is the growth. And when you can see in the States, it actually, I think most of the country itself, I think it is less than the 2.1, the replacement level. Of course, when you see Africans, I think they still enjoy, I think, a very high TFR there. But for the other things, what we like to highlight here, it is also the life expectancy as well. I think the life expectancy, and then you can see all the Belt and Road country itself. I think our life expectancy itself is not that high. I think so. That is the data what we've been seeing. But what we really like to highlight, it is for the demographic transition. When we have 65 countries, they are all very different. So there's not one size doesn't fit all. I think one description cannot explain all the phenomena, I think, in the Belt and Road countries. What you can see, the crude birth rate coming down, the crude death rate coming up, and actually that is all the countries. So when we're looking at the demographic transition, I think what was the stage one, when we have the high birth rate and high death rate, and then you have a population pyramid, look like a triangles, right? I think most of the countries, they are not here. But actually, in the Belt and Road countries, some countries, they are in the stage 2. The stage 2 where you have a high birth rate, and then the death rate is coming down. And then for the stage 3, it actually, the birth rate starts to come down as well, and then the death rate is further reduced. For stage 4, I think it becomes it's a bit stable now. And then for stage 5, what we call the post-transitional period, it actually, in some country, without the migration, it will experience the depopulation stage. I think that is the challenge what we are dealing with. So, and also when we talk about the diversity in the Belt and Road country, I think what we can see in terms of the aging itself, I think if the 7%, I think is what we call the pre-aging period, and then is the aging period from 7 to 14, and also the very aged or the super aged, the aged society is greater than 14%. What you can see if we use the 2015 as a line, they are about half of the country. They are still in what we call the pre-aging society. But in the other half, I think in the Belt and Road country, they are in the aging society, and some, they are even in a very, very aged society. I think that is the challenge what we're dealing with now. So what we like to do, we like to look at among these 65 countries, whether we were able to identify some sort of cluster, some sort of pattern. So what we have done, we use the natural growth rate, the total fertility rate, and the life expectancy, and at 3 ways, and then to try to classify these 65 countries. And what we have found out that, I think, so you can see there's one cluster here, second cluster here, third cluster here, and fourth cluster there. So when we do the clustering in the Belt and Road country, and then we see for the cluster A, it actually, they have a relative low fertility rate. I think their life expectancy is not bad, but it actually is very high in terms of the other cluster, but it actually, we have experienced a negative growth rate already. For the B, and then we have the 2.01, is the TFR, the life expectancy is 76.5, and then the growth rate is about 1%, and then we actually C and D is the one who is still under a lot of so-called the growth rate, it is very high, and then but at the same time, I think their life expectancy, it is the lowest. So when we're looking at so-called the demographic window, I think in terms of the 2 to 1, so it says 2 people who are in the 1564 and 1 people, I think for the less than 15 and greater than 65. What you can see, some country itself, I think the window is gone. You missed the opportunity already. So when you're looking at here, it is gone already. But there are many countries, who are still, either they are in the peak or they're still within the window. But what we are saying that is only the population distribution. But whether it's actually this window, it provides the dividends, it really depends on the quality of the people as well. So we're talking about the capacity building among these young people or these economically active people, the so-called what these people are doing. So when we're looking at the GDP, the decomposition, when we're looking at the 1995 to 2005 and 2005 to 2014, it can show there are 3 forces they're operating. So we try to decompose the differences between the GDP between this total time period. 1 is due to the productivity, and 2 is due to the labor force participation rate, and 30 is due to the population age structure. Now, what it seems to us, it seems that the contribution of the GDP growth is still a lot to do with the productivity. So if the country, if the productivity is high, it actually, I think it contributes the most, I think, to the increase of the GDP. However, when you see in the later part, I think in the second period, you can see there are some countries, they are actually, I think they will be suffer, I think, or for the, like in Oman, in UAE, and the productivity, it has not gone up, but it still will be benefited by the population age structure. But when you're looking at China, the China itself, I think for if you compare the differences between 1995 and 2005, it actually, the working participation rate here, it contributed negatively, I think, to the GDP. I think it could be that during that period of time, there's a bit of laying off from the state industry and all those things. But when you go to the second period, the 2005 and 2014, and it actually, you can see that as a lot of contribution is still driven by the increase of the productivity of the workers. When we talk about the increase of the productivity, there's one thing is linked to the productivity, it's about the quality of the workers. The quality of the workers, we are talking about the education or the human capital. So we took a measurement called the mean years of education for the whole population. And what you can see in the Belt and Road country, they are still at the low end. They're still at the low end in comparing to US, or to Canada, or to Australia. So I think, so what we are saying that although the countries in Belt and Road, they are young, but at the same time, I think the quality, I think, of the human capital, I think has still much room for improvement. When we're looking at the labor working participation rate, it actually, the labor working participation rate, it could relate it to the educational attainment level as well. But what you can see, I think along the Belt and Road country itself is also there in the low side. Now, it could be for different reasons. They could have a cultural reason, they have a family reason. But what we are seeing is that if we can identify where are the opportunity, where are the potential, I think if the labor force is needed, and how can we seize the opportunity, unleash this sort of hidden capital, I think, in our population. So when we're looking at the female labor participation rate, this is all the world average, about 50%, and then the Belt and Road country, I think there are some who are above, and there are some, they are below too. Now, if any country who are worried about they do not have the labor participation rate, and then if we have so much there, that is the opportunity. That is the opportunity that can be used, I think can be properly trained, educated, nurtured, can be put back to the workforce. So the other thing, when we come to the end, we talk about the wealth and the happiness. What we like to show is the GDP, and that's what we call the happiness index, right? Apparently, it follows a convex function. It seems that after the people earn around more than, I think, 20,000, I think, US dollar, and it seems that the level of happiness, it has slowed down. So that's why I think this morning, I think one of the speakers has mentioned about, hey, after we achieve the GDP, what else? What else? I think now you see a lot of Belt and Road countries, they are still here. Well, they still need the economic growth. They still need to develop their economy. But at the same time, I think if we foresee 10 or 20 years down the road, I think that if they're going to move up here, if you're going to concern about their well-being or their happiness, it's not only the GDP is the one we have to worry about. What about the Gini coefficient? The Gini coefficient, we also see the thing. It seems that the increase of the productivity itself, it also leads to a higher Gini coefficient. Now, how are we going to do it? So instead of just to increase the productivity, whether we can have a more holistic or integrated development, I think that is some of the challenges. So what we like to see, there are three things here. We talk about the labor market policy, the educational policy, and then the population policy. I think for the productivities, we talk about the human capital investment. I think we need to train high quality, the people that can produce, and then they can increase the productivity. The second thing about the labor force participation, we do want more people to have jobs. We do more ownership. We do more participation. Because I think if any country who have a high unemployment rate, especially among the young, I think it will lead to social unrest. So how can you manage to diversify your economy such that it can get more people to engage in the workforce? I think that is one of the challenges. And also the population aging itself, I think we talk about the birth, it is all coming down. The death, we're all going to die. I think the replacement by the replacement migration, that's just one of the challenge. We read the paper from Malaysia, from Professor Tang, and then they talk about there's a lot of people moving to Singapore, there's a lot of people, they are coming into Malaysia. How can we do the balance? How can you seize the opportunity to enrich the capital? That is something that we need to. So the final discussion, we talk about short-term and long-term hardware and software, the GDP and the well-being, and we talk about the co-creation and sharing. I think when we talk about Belt and Road, I think it's not just how to shift the excess product, the steel manufacturing, the high-speed rail, this sort of thing, to other countries. We are talking about a sustainable development, if not for most, at least, if not for all. I think we have this bucket theory. I think if someone falls short here, it doesn't matter, some people are doing very well, the level of water you can hold is still that much. I think that is what we are talking about. So what we like to see, we see like a more holistic development, I think, in the Belt and Road country. And according to the Millennium Goals, when we are talking about sustainable development, we are ensuring that no one is left behind. So it's not only about the GDP, it's not only about working participation rate, we are talking about an overall development of all the people in Belt and Road country, and also at a global level as well. Thank you.